Hey, it's your Las Vegas poker coach. On this podcast, we take a professional mindset to talk about poker and make some money at the game we all love. I invite you to listen in as we talk strategy, casinos, and life in general. Thanks for tuning in. Hey everybody, good to be back with you. This is the LV Poker Coach. Looking forward to spending some more time with you. Today we're going to talk about, can you make a living playing 1-2 and 1-3 professionally? I see that come up on the discussion boards or as questions. People want to play professionally. They may just not have the bankroll for it or just not as much saved as they'd like. So they want to try to be a professional at 1-2, 1-3. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to try to answer that today. I want to be clear, though, that I would never want to discourage anyone from following their dreams, especially when it comes to poker. If you think you want to be a professional and you can only afford to play 1-2, 1-3 because you're staying within your means and your bankroll, please go ahead. I wouldn't want to discourage anyone to do that. Go ahead and do that. Playing poker for a living is a wonderful thing. I'm just here to present some of my thinking. You may agree with it, you may not. That's okay. It's just my viewpoint, but I wouldn't or it shouldn't want to make it stop you from doing something you want. If you really want it, you're going to go after it, and that's great. So with that in mind, I'm also going to proceed assuming that you are a winning player at 1-2 or 1-3, and you have the records to back it up. If you don't have records, start keeping them. Because one, they're going to be helpful at tax time. And two, you need to be honest with yourself and make sure that you're not making a mistake by playing professionally. Because if you're not a winning player, then you're not playing professionally. You're just going to have a very expensive break in your life. So make sure that you have a good number of hours behind you, that you're net positive for all of those hours, that you are accustomed to putting in sessions at a table, and then you'll be in a much better position to be a professional. I'm also going to assume that you can beat the game for around 10 big blinds an hour. Now, there's no magic formula for that number. It's a number that I know I have achieved. I've achieved it when I was playing full-time professionally, and I'm achieving it now as what I would call a advanced amateur, where I'm playing every week. So 10 big blinds should be an attainable goal. And it's really kind of like the bare minimum for most games for you to be able to say that you're beating the game. If you're only making 2 big blinds, 4 big blinds, a lot of that can just be variance, where you're just running kind of good for an extended period. So, make sure that you're in the double digits. You can beat the game for 10 big blinds. And that you've done that, in a verified way in your records for an extended period. And then the last assumption I want to make sure that you realize, is that you aren't going to be able to play 40 hours a week. That's just too much. It's too much of an expectation for you to play that for your A game. You have to bring your A game every time you play poker as a professional. Otherwise, you're going to cost yourself hours at the table. Very, very, very few people have the stamina to play their A game for 40 hours a week. When I was playing professionally, the most I would ever demand of myself was 6 hours a day, 4 hours a week. 4 days a week. So that's a total of 24 hours a week. That's it. That was my limit. Your limit could be different. You could be higher than that, and that's good. But don't sit there and do your math and say, well, if I make $30 an hour and there's 2,000 work hours in the year, I can make $60,000 a year playing poker. You're not going to do that. You're not going to play anywhere near 40 hours a week. Of course, you're going to have your good weeks, and during fight weeks, I would play extra. When there was some other big events like New Year's, I would also play extra, things like that, right? And that's okay. But you're really going to average close to 20, 25 hours a week of your top game. Okay? So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start talking about playing 1-2, 1-3 as a professional. So a lot of the conversation today is just going to be focused on economic realities. That's really what it comes down to. You're not a professional poker player if you're not paying your bills from poker. So the amount of your bills and what your life looks like right now is going to dictate a lot about what you can and can't do. So you need to make sure that you're in the right place in life to be able to do that. Do you have a lot of bills? Do you have kids? Do you have a lot of other obligations that you have to keep up with, financial obligations and time obligations? Are you going through a big life change like a divorce or other things like that? Those are the things that you want to make sure that you avoid in your life as you are thinking about being a professional. In my case, I was self-employed. I was self-employed as a consultant, and I was kind of in between contracts. Where one client had finished the project and I was waiting for another client to start up. And that can always be a dicey thing because you're kind of waiting for budgets to be approved and certain things to fall into place right and so on and so forth. So, consulting is kind of like that feast or famine thing. So in the months in between contracts, that's when I would play poker. So I still made all of my income from poker, still paid all of my bills from poker. But it wasn't like I was desperate to play or I didn't have like future prospects that could help me out in case I ran bad or things like that. So that was my situation. Obviously, everybody's going to be in a different situation. Just make sure that you are in the right time and the right frame of mind to be able to do this. And I'm speaking from experience here for the rest of this podcast because one of my primary games when I was professional was the 1-2 at MGM. At least I still think it's 1-2. It might be 1-3 now. This was a couple years back, but that was my primary focus. I just played the very small games, and that's how I made my living at 10 big blinds an hour because I had the lifestyle that could be paid with such a relatively small salary. I mean, you do the math. 10 big blinds at 24 hours a week. It's not a ton of money, but it was enough to meet my personal needs. I don't have kids. I don't have a wife. I had a nice rental that was very affordable. So you can make a living at 1-2, 1-3. That's the bottom line. You can do it. You'll earn about $20 to $30 an hour for 20 to 25 hours a week. And sometimes maybe you'll hit 30 hours a week. And now, can you live on that? Is that an economic reality that makes sense to you? So to me, the answer was yes, I can make a living on it, but life probably won't be very fun. At least not for the not for the long term, or for the things you wanted to. Don't misunderstand me. Playing poker was a ton of fun. I can't tell you how much pleasure I enjoyed just from knowing that I was paying my bills because I was pretty good at a card game. That makes you feel really good. At least it did for me. But you're not going to be able to take extended breaks, right? Poker becomes this treadmill that you can't get off of. Because when you get off, there's zero income, right? It's not a remote job. You have to be there. At least, in the live space. You can play remotely online, obviously. But it requires a lot of your personal commitment to be there. And again, every hour that you're not playing is an hour that you're not having an income coming in. That can be tough. There's no retirement savings. There's no paid vacation times. That can be the hardest part of being a professional poker player. It'll be very hard for you to save for big things like a car or a house or things like that. It'll be very hard to add to your bankroll, right? At 1-2, 1-3, you're basically just paying your bills, and that's it. You can't pay your bankroll at all. You can't see your bankroll grow, which means you won't be able to move up in stakes. So basically, you'll be able to stay housed and fed, but that's it. Nothing much beyond that will be possible. You won't be homeless. You'll be having a ton of fun playing poker. You'll be able to eat the occasional steak dinner from the comps that you get because you're putting in so many hours in the room. But other than that, that's all you'll be able to do. That's all your life will consist of. You won't be able to go on vacations or breaks or say, hey, I'm just going to take the next 2 weeks off because I'm tired. Can't do that. You got to keep going, right? So life won't be very fun, but you can play professionally at those stakes. So coming back to what I mentioned earlier, you need to take a view of poker as your job. And your job, any job that you have in the world, needs to do more than just meet your needs. It needs to provide more than that, right? It needs to provide you with paid vacations. It needs to provide you with retirement savings or, little extra money you can put away in the bank. You really can't do that at 1-2, 1-3. What happens when your clothes wear out or you need new shoes or you need a new car? It's really hard to come up with those things when you're playing 1-2, 1-3. Again, you'll keep yourself housed and fed, but be very hard for you to do much more than that. And perhaps most of all, what should be most important to you is that you're also going to want to move up in stakes at some point. If you can play decently professionally, and you start playing full time, you're going to get really, really good at poker. You're going to get really, really good at playing people. That's really fun. But you're not going to have the role to be able to sit in other games and move up and potentially make even more money. It's just, your bankroll is basically going to stagnate because every other dollar you're making is going to keeping you housed and fed. So that's another thing to consider where, you're going to want to move up, but you literally won't have the ability to do anything about it. It's a little bit of a golden jail scenario where, yes, you'll be playing poker, but you'll basically be stuck at 1-2, 1-3. So I would suggest to you that professional poker play really starts at 2-5. You have to be good enough to beat the game at 2-5 to be able to kind of give yourself some breathing room and really make a little bit more than what your average job out there is going to pay you. So 2-5 is about the level where you're going to be, a little bit more comfortable. There's plenty of professionals that play 2-5. And it really gets a whole lot better at 5-10. At 5-10, if you can beat that game for 10 big blinds an hour, 24 hours a week, now you're talking something where you can approach, start looking at six figures and really start, kind of making a little bit of a more comfortable life for yourself. Now, beating 5-10 is much different than beating 1-2 and 1-3. So, massive skill that you're going to have to upskill there. But that's really where the more comfortable professional play begins. So again, I don't want to discourage anybody. If it's your dream to play 1-2 and 1-3 and that's all you can do, go for it. It's a lot of fun. It's one of the best jobs in the world. But just know what you're getting into. Do the best you can. Give an even bigger effort to try to get yourself a bigger role so that you can sit in 2-5, so you can sit in 5-10. And you'll be well on your way to becoming a poker professional that way. Hey, let's keep the conversation going. You can reach me on all socials at LV Poker Coach, all one word, on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.